Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tara Crawford. I'm a second-year PhD student here in the Higher Education Student Affairs program. Welcome to our Qual Lab lunch. We're so excited that you're here today. Today, we will be having Dr. Joseph Spurlock, Assistant Professor within the Department of Educational Studies at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, who will be delivering a talk titled Critical Ethnographic Methods, Partnership, Data Creation, and Criticality Without Critique. We're so excited that you're here, and we're looking forward to connecting with Dr. Spurlock. Over the course of the next hour, we will go over some very quick housekeeping things. We are recording this session as well as closed caption is on, and so you'll be able to have the closed caption. If you'd like to turn that off on your end, you could do so as well. And we'll also have some remarks from our director, Dr. Penny Pasquay. And then after that, I will formally introduce Dr. Spurlock. After Dr. Spurlock gives his talk, we'll have an opportunity for a Q&A session in which you can share your questions with myself, Dr. Pasquay, or Dr. Spurlock. And since this is a webinar format, I will be reading the questions off, and Dr. Spurlock will give his response to your questions. So thank you so much. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And with that, I'll pass it to Dr. Pasquay for her comments and remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Tara Crawford has been awesome as a graduate student here at the Qual Lab. We're very glad to have you all here, and apologize for last week when we were trying to do this session and got Zoom bombed. So now we have a webinar format. It doesn't necessarily allow for as much engagement, but we hope that you're using the chat and do engage with the speaker in that way. And Tara will be sure to read out the questions at the end when we get to that point, but we've got an amazing setup for you today. I did want to mention that now is when we would usually do a land acknowledgement, but Ohio State has a new policy due to legislation in SB1, and Ohio State's policy is that land acknowledgements are considered actually a statement on behalf of an issue. And if you go to the next slide, here's a little bit more about that statement. And in terms of land, labor, research, I do think it's really important that we as researchers pay attention to our own multiple histories that have happened before us, that are happening, things that are happening now, and what we're building for the future. So as you do research, do pay attention to all the multiple areas and perspectives that come into play. It's crucial for our research beyond research positionality and in terms of making a difference for the world. With the next slide, I do want to invite you, if you ever are in Ohio, we have this UNESCO World Heritage Site throughout Ohio. It's the Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks, Indigenous Spaces, and it's truly amazing. If you do come to Ohio, do try to get a tour, and I welcome you to that space, as well as our Qual Lab office here at Ohio State and that space. Moving on to the next slide, a little bit about the Qual Lab. We are no longer funded by the College of Education and Human Ecology, but we are funded through grants and contracts. So I'm working on a Department of Defense grant right now, some internal and external grants and funding and contract with colleagues across fields and disciplines, and that's really been wonderful. What we have continued to do is try to make sure everything that we have is up and free and available on our dashboard of resources. So if you're considering what's the difference between ethnography and narrative inquiry, please go to those resources for courses, for materials that you're looking for. We're going to, again, put all that up online for you in order to make sure that we're sharing and living out the things that we believe with the Qual Lab as we continue to do this work. I think that's it from me as I pass it back to Tara. Yes, I did want to actually focus on a positive quote from Amanda Gorman about how there's always light if we're only brave enough to see it, if we're only brave enough to be it. So with your research, I hope you are brave enough to be it. Joe Spurlock was a fabulous GRA with the Qual Lab, is now a faculty member, and I know he lives this in so many great ways. I'm excited to have him be introduced by Tara. I'm going to hand it back now to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pasquay. I truly appreciate your remarks. As mentioned, Dr. Spurlock is a graduate of Ohio State University. Dr. Spurlock today is an assistant professor of educational studies and at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, specializing in early science teaching methods. His research is focused on how science educators can counter neoliberalism in STEM education while supporting future-focused scientific citizenship for sustainability. And so, without further ado, let's all give a virtual round of applause for Dr. Spurlock as he prepares to present and speak with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you both for your very kind words. I'm going to get my slides shared and we will get started. All right. Get my participant view. Okay, we're back. Last time we met, we were shown once again that hateful cowardice is empowered and encouraged in our current political climate. But we are persisting through that regardless. Really happy to be here. I think just to get this out of the way up front, I think I am as troubled by SB1 and the university's comportment with it as everybody else is. And I'm using my personal computer, my personal email today because my own university is discouraging us from using university resources for anything political. And my philosophy on qualitative research is that it inherently political, especially when we do this critical work. So we'll keep pushing. All right. Critical ethnographic methods, that's the very long title. When I did my dissertation, I learned how to make a super long title for things. But let's get into it. So we are going to be talking about critical ethnographic methods, and I will be talking about that in the context of this preschool classroom that I used as my dissertation site. So I will be calling back to Miss Callie, to the students, to the classroom, just to give hopefully helpful examples that illustrate what I'm talking about, even though the techniques I talk about and the methods and such will be sort of broadly applicable, hopefully, to your own work. I'm going to switch up the order a little bit because if you were here last time, you already heard some stuff, so I'm just going to like change it up a little bit. No, sorry, I'll skip that for now. So theory, I want to start talking about theory. For me, the theory was that, knowledge is socially constructed, that what people say represents who they are, and everything is sort of tied up in social settings and communication and, collaborative existence. When you go into a space and you want to be critical, the assumptions that you bring with you are your theory. And that is extremely vital to understand and articulate. So for me, a lot of language theory and social theory was involved. So that was the lens through which I was looking at interactions and social consequence and power dynamics and how structures were illustrated and all those sorts of things. Whatever your theory is, be intentional about it, and also, to quote my advisor, Dr. Hikita, hold it loosely. If you get in there and find that the theory and the assumptions you went in with are not serving you and are not serving the work that you're doing, be willing to read something new, come in with a new perspective, and apply that. You can do that after your data creation as well. If you're analyzing and you're like, this isn't yielding anything that I think is really productive in the environment of academia or critical work, try a different theory and analyze it again, and you might find something more fruitful. This is not changing your data to provide evidence to prove your own conclusions. This is changing your perspective on the data so that you can see what you may not have already seen. The data stays the same. You are always a lens on your data. You are always interpreting it. It is always going to change depending on who was looking at it. But your theory can inform what that data does for you in your work, shall we say. All right, so I mentioned I use social and cultural theory, and in my dissertation, I cited a lot of songs. I had a whole playlist. And this particular song is about collider particles. It's about, quantum physics. But I thought it felt a lot like qualitative work, especially ethnographic work, because these people are just colliding into each other and moving around, and all these things are happening. And mistakes, when she says Madison Cunningham, check her out if you haven't. Mistakes are miracles designed to take what's sensible and ask yourself why. That is really when you're doing qualitative work, you're discovering new things. You say the wrong thing, you write down something that you think was a mistake, you notice something that you never noticed before. Suddenly you have new possibilities. That can happen in the field, that can happen afterward. And this is what I mean when I say that people are bouncing off of each other. They're discoursing. They're using discourse. They're changing each other. They're shaping each other. That's my perspective on the social and cultural theory, just for context. I also talk about emergent becoming, another Mads Cunningham song. Who are you now? Who are you this time? Meaning that we are never done becoming. We are always changing. We are always becoming something new, depending on who we are with, what we are saying, where we are. And I found this to be extremely useful in ethnographic work because you don't want to decide who somebody is based on what you've seen. You don't want to decide who you are based on what you've seen. There is always this process of change and becoming, and understanding that process as it happens, bound by the time that you were in the field, can be absolutely fascinating and make a lot of space for your criticality to show up because things can change so quickly. I would usually ask if anybody has questions because I'm a classroom teacher, but we're in a webinar because of malfeasance. But anyway, positionality. Penny mentioned this earlier. Our positionality is extremely vital. Who you are in a space, who you are relative to your work is irrevocably tied to your work. So my positionality within this work was not to evaluate and critique, and I don't think that it ever should be. Should is a problematic word. I learned that in therapy, but I don't think it's helpful. So you got to ask yourself, who does this help and how does it help? If I am evaluating and critiquing, like I'm going out for my field students and I'm evaluating, critiquing their technique, that's to help them become better teachers in their craft that I am actively teaching them how to do. But for ethnographic critical work, it's more about understanding. It's not about going in and saying, well, if they'd done that, it would have been better. If these people communicated in a different way, if they made different choices, whatever. That's not the work. The work is to understand what they're doing and tell their story on their terms. And I'll talk about that more soon. My own identity, taking from Buchholz and Hall, is complicated. And it is my positionality. It is socially constructed. It is contextual. It is endlessly complicated. Me as a white scholar working in STEM spaces, my identity is traditionally favored in STEM spaces, particularly science and math, right? So if I'm going in here, I need to be aware of that favor that I have received, that potential bias that I have, and unpack that and tear that apart and understand, well, why me and not somebody else, for instance? And this goes for dozens of structures, arguably most in American history, right? Educators used to be, women weren't allowed to be teachers because it was seen as a man's job because it's too much responsibility. And then suddenly, oh, well, now it's a caretaking position, so now women can do it, right? These things don't live in the 19th century. They carry through to today. And I don't need to tell you this, I think you know this. But your positionality with these things absolutely affects your work. The sooner that you accept that and embrace that, the sooner you will be doing more meaningful and more helpful and more groundbreaking work. So with your positionality in tow, with your theory in tow, you're going to enter the field. I recommend you just find a way to be in the space. If you're working with kids, that means background checks, getting to know the administrators and meeting the teacher before you meet the kids, and all those sorts of administrative things that you need to do to show that you are a safe individual to be around these kids. And you're not just coming in to take advantage of their lives for your own publications. Tara and I were talking about this earlier. Publications, what are we doing it for? Are we helping anybody or are we helping ourselves? You got to go in and make sure that they understand that you are not going to appropriate their existence for your own benefit. And there is some of that no matter what we do. It's about offsetting. It's like carbon footprint. You're always going to have a carbon footprint. How do you offset it? You're always going to be exploiting the situation in some way. How do you offset it? That's just like a reality of our work. But how do you become a sort of friend of the community? How can you just be around? For me, again, in my context, I just hung around in the classroom. I was a helping hand. I would talk to the kids, let them get to know me, let them learn my name. I would learn their names, and I would just sort of be around. I'd play, I'd talk, I'd read. And after about a month, I started setting up a camera. And I would see myself in the video, and I would be talking to the kids, and I would start to get to know what was going on with everybody. So this is called rapport building, I believe, by oh, is it Heath and Street, I think, call it rapport building, or is that Hammersley and Atkinson? One of the books call this rapport building, relationship building. This is a really great way to become a friend of the community. Now, it's not up to you to say, well, now I'm a friend of the community. It's up to the community to say that you're a friend of the community. It's like being an ally. You can't just say like, well, I'm an ally now. Like you need to follow certain prerequisites so that people identify you in that way. So if you want to be a friend of the community, not a member of the community, mind you, that's a bit lofty. I wouldn't shoot for that, especially on a year-long, you go once a week like I did. You're not going to be a member of the community, but be a friend to the community. Build trust. And then you build partnership. To get that partnership, you need buy-in. In my case, I had a teacher that was extremely enthusiastic about being part of research, growing her craft, learning about how to do research, learning about science. She eventually ended up joining the PhD program and is now doing this work herself. So automatic buy-in from her, I was extremely fortunate. The other thing that you want to do for partnership is make it clear that you're not evaluating and critiquing. You're here to learn. And I would remind her, I am here to learn. I might have some perspective that you don't have. You have some perspective that I don't have. I've read all these academic journals you've taught for 25 years. My thing is not more important than yours. I'm here to learn from you, tell your story, and try to grow the field of education in some kind of meaningful and caring way by observing the work that you do. And she knew that was the goal. She had a similar goal. And so we had a partnership in this project. That partnership is absolutely important and central to everyone's success in these endeavors. Um, so if you have questions, take a second to type them in the thing and then we'll answer them later. Give you a second to process. Sometimes I talk a lot and fast and I just take a pause. Okay, so data creation. Now I don't call it data collection. Taking after Emerson, Fretz, and Shaw, we create rather than simply record reality. So I did video-enabled ethnography. That's information. That's digital information that I can watch. It's not data, in my estimation, until I have interpreted in some way. So I've done participant observation. I am participating and I am observing and I am filming. And then I'm going to look at that and I'm going to look at my jottings. I'm going to look at and turn them into field notes. And I'm going to start to say, this is now data because it is interpretive and it is based on my theoretical and positional lens. That's when it becomes data to me. Excuse me. And then you go from information to data. And then if you're familiar with argumentation, like Toulmin's argumentation, then it becomes evidence that yields findings. In a deductive sense, you would say, I think this is happening. Here's my evidence to prove it. In an inductive sense, I believe I'm using that right. I would look at the evidence and then say, well, I'm seeing this and this, and I believe that this is what I could interpret or assert is happening here. And you go both ways. You're not going to do one or the other necessarily, but that's like a whole other talk. But that's what I believe about data creation. When people say I'm doing data collection, I'm not no shade to anybody, but I just don't take that up like you're filming and you're talking, but it's not data until you've interpreted in some way. That interpretation starts from the day you walk in the door, but just be mindful about what you call data and what you call information, I suppose is what I'm saying. A quick note on gear and field notes. When I first started, I had my iPad and I was writing down what I was seeing and I was looking and I was trying to talk and I was trying to write and I was trying to look and I was trying to write. And I found it extremely restrictive from a participant observation standpoint. I became a voyeur. I don't want to do that. I want to be a participant. So what I did, I have it here. I got this, and I'm not trying to shill for the Zoom Corporation, which is different than the Zoom that we're currently using. I got this H1N guy and I got a lavalier mic, and I put it through my sleeve, put it on my left sleeve because that's my not non-dominant hand. And when I needed a jotting, which is just like a quick thing I need to write down about something I saw that's on the video, I would just say, child B has entered the writing area and is starting a project or something. Child B said that thing they said yesterday about being someone's best friend, whatever. Then when I'm rewatching the video, I have that audio on there, separate audio, mind you, because then I have my other camera, and then I can write that stuff down, and then I can turn that into field notes. That was better for me. It's an extra step, but it let me be present in the space. Also, make sure you have rechargeable batteries or even power blocks, those things that people put on their phones when they're walking around the neighborhood. Super useful. Oh, I was just checking the chat. Yeah, cool. Thanks. So that is my suggestion. It doesn't have to be a Zoom. I don't care what company or brand you use. Try to get it used if you can. Try to get some grant money. But that is my recommendation. So reciprocity, if we're talking about partnership, you also should think about reciprocity. You're in this space doing ethnographic work. A quick note, the difference between ethnography and ethnographic. And ethnography is a strict thing where you're going and you're basically living among a community for an extended period of time and you're with them all the time. What I did is not an ethnography, capital E, it is ethnographic. So it's taking up tenets of an ethnography and applying it essentially in what is tenable as a graduate student, going to a classroom once a week and still doing your readings and still doing your teaching if you're a GTA and stuff like that. So what I do is ethnographic. It is influenced by ethnography, but it is not a strict ethnography. Important distinction. There's a very good Green and Bloom article about, I think I'm saying that right, about ethnography versus ethnographic that you should check out. And Sophia Zhang did some work on that as well. So if you are doing ethnographic work, that's human-centered. Qualitative ethnographic work, we're human-centered. We want to understand people. We want to understand cultures and language and languaging and discoursing and all that. It's important that you are being reciprocal with these people. They are giving you their time and their perspective and their words. What can you do? How can you offset the appropriative nature of research that Heath and Street talk about? That's going to depend on your setting. Opportunity, you could share resources. If you're going to do any kind of financial incentive, you got to be really careful about that with your IRB. Keep in mind, please. But IRB will let you know. But you could share resources. You could bring library books or bring ideas or help lesson plan if you're like in a setting like me. You could offer guidance. The teacher that I worked with, Callie, was applying to be a PhD student. I was able to help her in that process because I was already in it and I knew some of the ins and outs of that process and what people were looking for and what you needed to do. You could offer co-authorship. Callie and I have presented together, and I'm hoping in the future we can co-author once I get through the first year as a faculty member and I feel like I have time to write anything. You can assist in classrooms if you are in a classroom. And you can offer intellectual contribution to the center, the school organization. I helped them to build a STEM space with interactive activities that any of the classes could go to in the middle of the school. Finding ways to give back to the community that you are trying to be a friend to, absolutely essential in my estimation. If you can, find ways to do it. If you're not sure, ask your participants, how can I help? What can I do? It's only going to build your relationship. So this brings us to the member checking idea. This is essentially, I found this stuff, or I wrote this dissertation or this article, read over it, see if it rings true to you. So to me, ethnographic means it's on the terms of the participants. So if I'm going to write something about these people, it's important for me to go and see, like, did I represent you appropriately? This does not mean don't write down the stuff that was rough. Don't write down the stuff that was hard. Don't write down times that something uncomfortable happened. This is to, hopefully you have trust with your participants. This is to ask them, is this a fair interpretation What do you think happened? How can I represent your perspective? How can I interpret this in a way that is more informed? So the way that I did member checking through my dissertation analysis, just to give you an example, I did a series of interviews with Callie. And I started there and I wanted to talk about ideologies. So through these interviews, I was able to identify some of the core ideologies that she had about teaching preschool. And then I pulled those out and I put them in a sheet and I brought them to her. I said, do you feel that these are appropriately representative of your ideologies about education? This is what you told me. Do you think this is still true? Did I interpret this right? And she would say yes or no or whatever. And then once I had a series of ideologies that I felt like these are member checked, Callie signed off on them, this is on her terms, I go into my classroom observations. In your case, it might just be people in a place doing stuff, whatever that is. And then I started to sort of deductively seek out these ideologies. And then from there, I was able to inductively see like what is the social consequence and all of that stuff. Then I brought all that to Callie and said, I see ideologies manifesting in the space. I see this social consequence. I see this action tending to lead to this action. Does all of this ring true to you? And she would say, yes, that is. Yes, no, that is not. Here's what I think. And then I was able to incorporate that into my write-up. So it's not all my perspective. The data analysis, my interpretation and my perspective is tied up in it irrevocably. But I can also add hers, and I can steer that in a way that is more representative of the participants. And then the more representative it is, hopefully the more helpful it is to the participants for their perspective, to the field, for, just integrity and giving truthful representations of what people can do to help their own students or help their own patients or whatever your context is. So a big part of this is critical ethnography, right? We want to talk about criticality without critique. I've already talked about not critiquing. I've talked about understanding. So if we're not critiquing the actions of the participants, where's the criticality? How are we critical then? Well, we have to locate it in the work. A way to think of this is this idea that Taylor and Hikita published, this deconstruction versus reconstruction. A lot of the critical work that we do that is vital is deconstructive. If you look at the work of like Gloria Ladson-Billings, Kimberly Crenshaw, Zeus Leonardo, they are often Danny Martin. They're deconstructive. They're going to look at these structures that are imposing and oppressive, and they're going to deconstruct them, and we're going to say, these are the problems. But what many of these people also do is they reconstruct. They say, well, if these are the problems, what do we do? Rochelle Gutierrez came up with Mathematesh, a new model of mathematics that takes in indigenous and other cultural ways of knowing, and science and physics and humanity. Robin Wall Kimmerer does this kind of work with braiding sweetgrass and the serviceberry. Reconstructing these things for a more sustainable, more equitable, better future, whatever better means. I wrote better a lot in my dissertation, and Dr. Keita was like, what do you mean better? And I was like, I'll just use a different word because I can't articulate it. But what does better mean to you? Decide what that means. So we can do these reconstructive works that are also critical. And your criticality manifests through your document. So you can describe your context and your participants and sort of flagging that critical language, talking about if it's appropriate and your participants sign off on it, talking about their gender identity in specific ways and how it impacts their experience, talking about racial and ethnic identity stuff if it is relevant and signed off on. The words that you use can show that you are a critical researcher. And this is really important because of this idea of marked and unmarked identities. There are many papers, but there's one in particular that talks about like, well, if I don't name the race and or gender of my participants, it's safe to assume that they're white males because it's an unmarked identity. It is the assumed default. And this is what, anti-woke language is all about, where like the Pentagon can't use the word woman or pregnant, whatever. Because that marks the identities. Those are marked identities, non-white, non-male, disabled, non-heteronormative in any way at all, whatever. Those are marked identities, and they are out of the norm. So well, I'm going to name that I have Black students in my classroom because they're outside of the norm. Normalize describing everybody and not marginalizing people by saying like, well, the people down the middle are all white and the people over here, I have to name this. This is so relevant right now because of all of the limitations on language. I'm here, we're here in this like arguably safe space. I'm on my computer and we're among like-minded people most likely. But when you get out there in the real, I don't want to say the real world, I have a problem with that term, but out in like talking to other academics and being at universities and stuff, it can be dangerous out there for these ideas. It is dangerous out there for these ideas. So pushing against those structures is really important. Oh, and I was just going to say, with the oh, I have something coming up. Sorry, I'm getting all out of whack here. What if you get political in your work? That's a fair question. Everything's political. You will get political. There have been people that I was a consultant for the Qual Lab for a year, and I got to talk about this stuff all the time, and it was really exciting. And people would say like, "Well, I just want to talk about men," and we'd be like, "What do you mean men?" Well, males. Do you mean biological males? Well, yeah. Okay, what about, people that don't identify with one gender or people who are trans, but they consider themselves men? They identify as men now. Well, I don't want to be political and name all that stuff. You're denormalizing humans. You're dehumanizing people by not normalizing their existence. It is political because everything is political. So go ahead and be political so that you can be a part of the solution, not a part of the heteronormative problem. That's my soapbox for that. This whole thing has been a soapbox that it just keeps getting taller. So how do you be critical without critiquing people? Here are some suggestions. Look at the structures that affect these people. Consider how intersectional oppression shows up in your data and these people's lives. Consider where these structures can or cannot be traced. Where are these structures seemingly absent from your data? Where can you not find them necessarily? And locate resistance to problematic structures. These are some suggestions. So I'll give you an example of how I did this. So in my study, structures I was looking at, industry-focused STEM neoliberalism, this meritocratic system of do well in STEM so you can get a job in coding and make millions of dollars, do well in STEM and get a medical degree and get a doctor and make millions of dollars. So like go and be an entrepreneur, go and be an entrepreneur. What about affecting the world for better? I don't know, just go make money. I considered intersectional oppression. STEM education is state-sanctioned mechanism of directly oppressive practices. Where was it traceable and where did I not find it? The way that Cali taught wasn't neoliberal or industry focused. It was about exploration and learning, and it was science all day. It was curiosity and critical thinking with every task, every passing out of a napkin, every serving of a bagel, every sharing of a magnetile. Everything was scientific, critical thinking. It wasn't about you're going to need to get these skills so you can get a job. It was about you're going to need these skills so you can be a caring human that contributes to the world. And I found that to be resistance. I found it to be a model for resistance, whether she intended it or not. My interpretation was that she was resisting these neoliberal STEM structures through her practice. And I thought that was very exciting. And that became the crux of all of my dissertation. So that was how I was critical of these structures using data in which I did not critique. Now, did I agree with every move Callie made as a teacher? It doesn't matter. I'm not going to answer the question. It's irrelevant. I was trying to understand, not evaluate. So I positioned my participants in asset-based ways. Positioning your participants in a deficit only does harm. That's how ethnography started. It was going out and finding the natives and seeing how primitive they were compared to white Europeans. That's not the work we do. That's not what ethnography is anymore. That's a tarnish on the name ethnography. So that's not the work. And you can critique oppressive structures and in some cases oppressive practices. So this could be the administration at the school. This could be the school district. This could be the local agencies that control whatever place you're going, whatever it is. This is how you can locate criticality without critiquing your participants. And if you take nothing else from this presentation, I hope that you take this. Again, with member checking, I mentioned this. It's more than being nice and avoiding discomfort. It's about making sure you're speaking on the terms of your participants. And if they ask your opinion, you can give it your expert opinion that they might think that you have, but don't position yourself as like, well, I know, and I'm an academic, and I'm blah, blah, blah. And you want to focus on how your study contributes to the larger cause of libertary reconstruction, whatever your field. If you're in higher ed or elementary ed or in labor or in construction studies or sports or whatever it is, I would push you, I would implore you to do studies that contribute to the larger cause of liberatory reconstruction, especially now. This work is hard, but you are brave and it must be done. This is the New Zealand MP that ripped up this revision to the treaty between the Maori people and New Zealand and did a haka with all of her Maori colleagues. This was a big, loud, incredible display of resistance. And this is basically the energy that we should all be trying to capture every day. Some suggested readings, just some books that I have found extremely useful in my dissertation in my regular life. The bold ones are the titles. The non-bold ones are the authors. Just read Lucy Avramidu's work, read Davies, read Danny Martin, read all this stuff. Frederick Erickson is fantastic. James Baldwin, duh. But yeah, so that's everything I have for you. I didn't talk for too long. I'm really interested to know, and it says Q&A, but like you could write comments probably, right? Questions, comments, concerns, any infuriations that I have created for you. I would love to know what they are and respond to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Spurlock. What a rich discussion. That we appreciate all of your insight and advice. And we do have some questions. And so I will look into our chat and share those with you. And then we do have some questions about your work and then some logistical questions. So I'll ask questions about your work and we get into the logistics. Now, answer those logistic questions as well. Now, the first question is, what is a minimum sample for this type of research? What is a minimum sample from this type of research?
Yeah, good question. I've answered this a few times in consultations. I don't consider there to be a minimum. In quantitative work, definitely you want to have a certain sample size and stuff like that. Is it Letts and Billings that wrote 8 is enough? I think 8 people is great. If you have like a small group of people, like a focus group, that's great. But if you are just doing a profile of one person, you can still be critical and do this ethnographic work. It's easier to tell a story probably if you have like maybe 5 to 8 people or more. There were 12 kids in the class at any given time and a couple of co-teachers. But yeah, it's not a helpful answer and I apologize. It depends, and I don't think that there is a minimum. I think you can find places to do this work. I'll put it this way, it's depth over quantity. If you have one person that you can talk with about these important topics and their story allows you to be critical of structures, then I think that work is worth doing. And you can make a dissertation out of that. So
Thank you. The next question we have is, the importance of rapport is so crucial. Thank you so much for sharing that. Do you have any tips or advice for people who are trying to enter a school or a university space for ethnography if they are not a part of the community already?
yeah, what a lot of people do is just sort of cold call or cold email principles. it's not a surefire thing, and it's really hard to get into spaces when you don't have connections. It's extremely difficult. But you can just start reaching out to, I wouldn't go to like superintendents personally. I would go to principals or center directors for preschools or something like that, and just tell them your intentions, tell them where you're coming from. Um, Ask them, have you worked with OSU? I don't know where you're at. I shouldn't assume. Have you worked with this university researchers before? Do you have protocols in place? And always go in like, what do you need from me in order to make this happen? How soon do you need a background check if I don't have one? Do you have a place that I can go to get fingerprint? Well, like whatever those logistic things are, I would do that. I would, if you're a graduate student, ask your peers where they are. I got really lucky with my site because my time, Mandy Smith, my previous advisor, was working in partnership with these people, and then she asked me to help her with something, and then I got connected. It was pure happenstance, but that was just connections. So you don't have connections, I would just, yeah. Was this a school specific question? I'm sorry. It
That
was,
was a good answer. Yes, it was mainly about how do you conduct an ethnography if you don't have the relationships and you want to get into the university or particular
yeah,
school.
yeah. Just contact somebody in charge, but not too high because they'll ignore your email probably. Go to somebody or even email a teacher and then say like, hey, can you put me through to the principal? And if you don't get a response the first time, try again or try somebody else. Um, yeah, I hope that's helpful. It's hard.
Before moving on to the next question, I did want to say one of our guests who asked a previous question about the minimum sample size had mentioned, thank you so much for your answer and a great presentation. So I
Oh,
wanted to
thanks.
center their voice and elevated that. So
Cool. Thank you, Alexander.
thank you. The next question is, can you mention, I know Dr. Pasquale put some resources in the chat, but can you also mention a few of your recommendations in terms of books or literature that we could read to learn more?
Yes. Fortunately, I have all this stuff behind me. Um, okay. So Patricia Hill Collins is known for Black feminist theory, but she and Surma Bilge wrote a book on intersectionality. I recommend that one. An extremely impressive example of an ethnography that could be inspiration for you is Homegirls by Norma Mendoza Denton. Um, the work of Michael Agar is really excellent. He's written a few books. The Lively Science is really great as an intro to this sort of work. Fred Erickson, Talking Social Theory was on my list, but this is like just an exceptional, timeless book. Let me just give you a couple more. Boy, where'd it go? Where's my David Bloom book? Oh, there it is. The title of this is very, very long. It's got many authors. It is the David Bloom Discourse Analysis book from 2022. You'll be able to find it. Bloom 2022 Discourse Analysis. You'll find it. Michelle Fine, Just Research in Contentious Times, talking about critical participant action research. And Thematic Analysis, Braun and Clark is a really good analysis book. We didn't really talk about analysis a lot, but Braun and Clark. And the last one that we will do is Crenshaw and some other people edited the Seeing Race Again, actively countering colorblind perspectives. The whole like I don't see race thing is deeply problematic and it erases people's experiences. So this is a really excellent book with a lot of really impressive work in there. And also like James Baldwin, The Fire Next Time. There's a lot of quotes from that in my dissertation. And he wrote a book called, he wrote an essay called Dear Teacher or something like that. It's in like a really thick anthology, something to do with a train. I'm terrible with titles. I don't mean to disrespect people's work. But I got it from the library because it was really expensive and I don't have it anymore. Yes, Baldwin wrote something about teachers. Teddy Chow cites it in some of his work as well. So also read Michiko Hikita's work, Teddy Chow's work, Penny Pasquale's work, um, Mandy Smith, Sophia Zhang, Leslie Moore. These are people that I've worked with on my candidacy and dissertation. So yeah, all that stuff.
Thank you. We do have a few more questions.
Okay.
Can you please explain again the difference between ethnography and ethnographic work and the distinctions there?
Yeah, of course. So I mean, this is my version of it. And I'm pulling up my end note to make sure I tell you the right thing. Yeah, okay. Ethnography and ethnographers of and in education. So it's Green and Bloom, 1997. There is this idea of ethnography, and this is the work that Molly Blackburn does. This is the work that Mindy Blaze does. You go and you immerse yourself in a culture. And this is my understanding of it, so other people might say something different. So just caveat there. You immerse yourself in a culture and you exist there and you get to know the participants and you kind of live alongside of them as much as you can. Homegirls, the Mendoza Denton book I mentioned, she goes, I think for like a year or so, goes and hangs out with these young, I don't want to say female, I don't like biological terms, young woman gang members, I think in California. It's been a minute since I read this. And she's just around them all the time and she becomes a part of their community and she goes and hangs out with them. And she did a really great thing where like she didn't use anybody's actual names and she like combined people, like two people became one, so they're like unidentifiable because like she didn't want them to get found out by like the cops and ICE and stuff. But she just lives in that community and just is there. Composites, yeah, that's it. So that would be an ethnography. Like she's fully committed. She's carrying a camera on her all the time, and she's just there like day after day after day after day after day for an extended period of time. Ethnographic is more like, well, I'm going to do as much as I can participant observation. I'm going to be in among these people and I'm going to be ethnographic in my approach. So I am going to be integrated. I'm going to talk with them. I'm going to write down what they say. I'm going to play with these kids. I'm going to carry these things that these people are carrying. I'm going to do whatever. But you're not doing it. You're not like living there. You're not like integrated into the community in the same way. It is influenced by the work of ethnographers, modern ethnographers, not old 19th century European ethnographers. It's influenced by that. And it's on the terms of the participants and it's cultural and it's language and it's all that. But it's just ethnographic because you don't want to misuse the terms. You don't want to say that I am doing an ethnography because there are a lot of strings attached to that and a lot of people will take exception to that. So really just covering yourself, making sure that you're not like ruffling feathers or mislabeling your work. You want to say it's ethnographic in nature. And the Green and Bloom article lays it out beautifully and very articulately. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. A few more questions before we move on to the concluding slides and before we move on to the conclusion of the webinar. We didn't talk much about analysis, but how do you conduct an analysis within the confines of doing ethnographic work?
I used not strictly. Oh, everything's falling down. I use thematic analysis. They have the 6 tenets of thematic analysis. If you go to thematicanalysis.net, it's got all the 6 steps of it. And I did work that was sort of, I want to say influenced by this. There are a lot of very specific things that these authors talk about. I didn't get that specific because I had my own ideas about what I wanted to do, but I did do the phases. So I would recommend reading the 6 phases of thematic analysis, and following them. It's pretty straightforward. It's just like, look at all your data, read everything. Don't watch all your videos. If you have a year worth of videos, you're going to go insane. You can't watch them all. And you'll never transcribe everything either, but like, look at everything, familiarize yourself, and then you do some like coding, and then you try to find themes, and then you code again, and you double check your themes, and then you could, you can read it, but that's my suggestion. That's what I did. Braun and Clark's thematic analysis. And what's beautiful about it is interpretable and it is adjustable to your own needs. So it's not like a lockstep method. You can do it any number of ways that matches your work.
Thank you. Thank you. We have
And I'll add, I didn't use any digital stuff. I just did everything sort of like manually in Word documents, and it takes a really long time, but that is just my preference. Sorry, Tara.
no worries. No. Thank you. The next question is, how might your process change when you're developing an autoethnography?
I wish I could answer that question effectively. Autoethnography is one of those things that I've never fully been able to understand how to do it. And I can see the value of it, but it was never practical for the work that I was trying to do. I think this is especially important for researchers of color whose perspective is not represented well enough, and sometimes you just have to tell your own story. For me, like, my story is pretty readily available throughout the annals of academic work, so it wasn't helpful for me. So I don't actually know how to do an autoethnography. It's really hard. So I'm sorry I can't answer the question, but on the Qual Lab website, I'm sure there are many good resources about that.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Thank you. One of the last questions we'll ask is, how do you disseminate your findings? Earlier, you touched briefly on publications. And so how do you disseminate your work in ensuring that not only other critical scholars or academics are seeing it, but whoever else might be beneficial to see it? How do you get that out there?
So I can't say I've done a lot of it yet. I haven't published very much at all. I like to do presentations at conferences because then I can actually talk to people and I can like contextualize the stuff. I do discourse analysis stuff at conferences that are not friendly to discourse analysis kind of on purpose, because then they don't know what to do with me and they ask interesting questions. It throws people off more than you would believe. AERA was solid though. So definitely I like to be able to talk to people. Um, I think I talk about this stuff a lot with my students in my classes, try to apply this to their teaching practice because that's ultimately what I want to try to do. Just like anytime I can talk to people. And also I would recommend, you have to publish for the meritocratic thing that is academia. But you can also, like, you could start a YouTube page, or you could start a social media page. Like Teddy Chow is prolific on social media, and just get your ideas out there and not be precious about them, not try to be proprietary and like, I'm not going to give this away for free. Like, why? Just put it out there, make it available, as while we still have internet and we can put our own ideas up there, go ahead and do it. Those would be my suggestions. I'm not a great example because I haven't done that work yet, but that's what I want to do.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. I said that that was the last question, but I actually told a bit of a fib. We have one more question. Could you kindly pull up your references so we could show everyone different references and they'll be able to read and access those?
Yeah. Let me go full screen again. I'll do two things. I will try to paste them all in the chat and see if it comes out. It came out okay. It's not great. To share. Oh, there we go. And this is just like a relatively short list. There's a dozen other things that I didn't think of that if I think of other ones, I'll email the Qual Lab and let you know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we are nearing the conclusion of our webinar today. Before we fully commence, I did want to elevate a few resources of Dr. Spurlock's work and also give Dr. Spurlock a final opportunity to talk about the resources I'll share. So I'll just quickly share screen and we'll go from there. Did you have any comments or thoughts that you wanted to mention about this particular playlist, Dr. Spurlock?
It was just a bunch of songs that I like and related to chapters and sections of my dissertation. So like the Fever 333 song is like a super aggressive song about burning things down to build them up again. And if you know the work of Rage Against the Machine, if it's in there, the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is like a kind of an outlier because it's about how the reindeer didn't like Rudolph until he had a meritocratic purpose to get Santa Claus through. So it's meant to be ironic. But yeah, it's just a bunch of songs that are all throughout my dissertation, and I thought it would be it's a real grind to write a book basically and have every piece of it, picked apart by people who are doing it willingly and to help. But this was a way that I was like, well, this will be fun. And I can think about songs that I like. And then I quoted them and it seemed like out of the ordinary of academia. So that's what this is. And if it's songs you like, then great. It's on Spotify. I hate Spotify, by the way. Tidal pays artists more money. They're kind of all terrible. But you can find it through these QR codes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Spurlock. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. Please stay connected with us. You can visit our website at u.osu.edu/quallab. Please follow us on Twitter and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The recording of this webinar will be live on our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email us. I will pass it to Dr. Pasquay for any final remarks. But want to thank everyone again for their participation today. Thank you so much.
Well done. Thank you so much for the first Qual Lab lunch of the year. So glad. Please come back and we'll see you next time. And we'll have more information on our website, of course. Thank you again, Dr. Spurlock. And thank you, Tara, for a wonderful job of doing the host.
Thank you.
See you all soon.
See you soon.